What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Variant the Podcast. I'm Arris Quinones.
And I'm Tim Connolly.
And today we're going to talk about comic book stuff, per usual. So the biggest thing that's been going around the internet was we actually did an episode on it about a week or so ago now.
Yep.
Is DC and Marvel Comics going to merge? Now, we titled it that because that was a theory we have. That is not. Right. That is no means we're saying that's going to happen. Just with certain things that have been happening in the comics and outside.
Yeah,
it seems like maybe that could happen.
And we had a lot of people that were commenting on that episode without actually watching the video, and they thought that we were just doing clickbait. And no, that is actually what we were theorizing and questioning. Is that a possibility? If DC Warner, AT&T Warner could sell DC Entertainment and allow someone else to come in and buy it out because of some of the troubles that they're having. So we were actually speculating on that topic.
Which is funny because I literally opened up that episode with saying, now this is not clickbait.
Exactly.
We're speculating, but still.
Exactly.
So all you had to do is watch the first 20 seconds.
30, first 2 minutes, and you're like, oh, okay, they're actually going to talk about that. But since then, we've had, of course, Dan Didio has been dismissed or left DC. So big news right after, actually, we dropped that episode.
I think a day after.
Yeah, it was
like
right after that news broke, which only further puts the question marks in place of what's happening over there. And then on top of that, we've got some other things that we kind of want to elaborate on and clarify from the episode and some of the things that we talked about. That people ask questions about in the comments afterwards.
For sure. I know the biggest thing with that, at least from what I saw from the comments, is a lot of people were saying it's most likely going to be a crossover. And yes, totally, completely. Yes. I think both of us actually said that in that episode. But again, we were just kind of seeing long-term effects, what could potentially happen. But in all likelihood, it's more likely, again, for it to just be a crossover, because they've crossed over before in the past. They've crossed over several times in the past.
Yeah.
But with the state that everything's in now, we're like, well, what if it went one step further? Because there's been a lot of signs, that it could happen.
Yeah.
Will it? We don't know. Yeah. But anything's possible.
Anything is possible. And again, all of our speculation about all of these things was based on not just news that's out in the public domain, but conversations that we've had off the record with various people.
I think that's a point we probably should have stressed even more, because
we said it several times.
We did, but I
don't know how else we can.
I don't think people really again. There's a lot of conversations to be had behind the scenes that we have.
Yeah.
People who work with
because of what we do,
DC or Marvel.
We are we're half in the news world and we're half in the comic industry.
For sure.
And so because of that, we have relationships with people in the comic industry, and we talk to them off the record and have, normal conversations of things that they trust us not to repeat. So we don't. And some of those conversations, we've picked up on some things and got some things that have led us to question, wow, what is really happening here?
Yeah, so much so that, we're talking to someone from so-and-so company, and then I have a friend who works for so-and-so company, and it just lines up what the previous person said perfectly. And I'm like, well, there you go.
Exactly. And then you couple that, and this is something that I really wanted to clarify, because when we were talking about it, because we both agree that the crossover is definitive. They are hinting at some sort of a major crossover event between Marvel and DC. Even the title that they list in Doomsday Clock, the Secret Crisis, is a direct reference to both Secret Wars, which is a major Marvel event, and the Crisis events in DC, which is the events that DC is most, and they merge the two.
For sure.
But it's that, the Crisis events are what DC is most known for as far as events go. So everything is hinting towards this major crossover event between the two at some point in the future. Also, we talked about the dates, when is this going to land? It talks about 2026 and 2030. And, we don't know when exactly it is, but they reference 2026 as being the birth of 5G, which we know now is launching in earnest this coming Free Comic Book Day.
Tentatively, which I'm gonna get into in a bit.
Right.
As of now, it's still going down.
As of right now, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, and they're launching 5G is being born on Free Comic Book Day in the summer,
May,
right, in real time, that means that in the comic book world, this is 2026. Now, how long it will be between that and this major crossover event that's supposed to be, this merge that happens in 2030 that they're calling Secret Crisis in Doomsday Clock, and that, Donny Cates is hinting at the beginning of Thor #2,
right?
Is yet to be seen. So we were clear on the fact that there is a crossover event, but the step further that I'm saying about as far as, is it possible that AT&T specifically would not, and there was questions about some people making comments like we were saying that Disney was going to buy Warner Brothers. That is not what we are saying at all. That is not even in the cards. Disney couldn't buy Warner Brothers. They just bought 21st Century Fox for $70+ billion. They're not going and buying another movie studio. You're getting into monopoly territory, etc. We're talking about DC Entertainment specifically, which is owned by AT&T, Warner Brothers, Time Warner. That's one thing to clarify. But the other thing, the reason for the speculation is because AT&T, which is the parent company of Warner Brothers and obviously DC Entertainment, is and has been over the past year actively working to shed debt. They have a massive debt burden. It's down to something over $150 billion. And as of last year, it was up over 170. In this past year, they've already shed something like $20 to $23 billion between 20 and 23. And they've been doing that by selling off pieces of the company and making large cuts in other areas. So, and they're committed to reducing down that really heavy debt load, right? Because that is a massive debt burden. So to put that in context, Disney's debt burden after buying Lucasfilm, Marvel, and 21st Century Fox is about $50 billion. So that's 3 times that of Disney, and Disney just got done buying some of the largest entertainment over the past 10 years. They bought some of the largest entertainment houses in the world, right? So they're actively looking to reduce their debt and their expenses and their risk, right? So that's where, for me, that's where a lot of that speculation goes. If, with DC's comics not performing well and them going through all kinds of flux and there being a lot of uncertainty, and then their movies, some of their movies performing and some are not. And are they looking at as, hey, this as a whole is not performing up to par, and is this a risk that we want to continue to carry? Who knows? That's where the biggest part of the speculation comes from me is AT&T looking at DC as more of a risk or more as, hey, this is a profitable enterprise for us?
Yeah, I say I would agree with half of that because I know we talked about it before. I'm more on the end where I don't think that AT&T would sell DC Entertainment as a whole. I personally think they would just kind of chop off the publishing arm and not even necessarily, they could, I think it's more likely for them to either just sell the publishing arm, but even more likely than that to license it. Because back in, I believe, the early 90s, Marvel, that's what Marvel did. That's why Marvel doesn't own a lot of their characters' movie rights right now. Because they just sort of started selling them off to Sony, to Fox, and then, once Disney bought them, they're like, oh, we're rich again. Now we wish we didn't do that. So I think it's more likely to go that way, where I kind of mentioned it in the episode that preceded this on our main variant YouTube channel, that lots of companies in the comic book world or franchises license to different publishers. You got, Ninja Turtles are licensed to IDW, Power Rangers are licensed to Boom, Buffy, so on and so forth. All these big franchises, Ghostbusters, Transformers, massive properties are licensed to publishers. So I think if AT&T is like, look, we don't want to be publishing anymore, we'll just take Batman and license it to whoever wants to pay for it for like $1 billion, whatever that would be. I would imagine a big chunk of money to license DC characters. Then they'll just publish it. But I don't, even with their movies underperforming, I still think, Superman and Batman, they're just some of the biggest characters in the world. And I personally can't, I don't know what's in these big execs' head and mind and how they're looking at it, but I would imagine, because every Batman movie ever made has done really, really well. Well, even the Schumacher movies, the ones people don't like, they still do really, really well. The animated movies, the cartoons, it is a massive, you put Batman on anything, Superman on anything, it's going to sell. So I can't see them giving up everything, because you're talking about then they can't do video games, and they can't do TV shows, movies, cartoons. So I see it more of a publishing, they're looking to trim fat. So like, where can we cut costs and not have to worry about it? Because I don't think AT&T was like, hey, you know what we want to do when we buy Time Warner? We want to publish comic books. They're just like, oh no, we can make millions and billions off of these characters, but not necessarily on the publishing arm. So I think if anything, that is where I think it would go. And, following, kind of the path that Marvel went down, which would be unfortunate if it did go that way. But going back to the comic book, the Doomsday Clock finale, you did mention the timelines there, where the Secret Crisis would be 2030. I did think it was interesting. Someone brought it up in the comment section, actually, of the episode we posted, is DC going to merge with Marvel, saying that in 2030, that's when technically these characters become public domain. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen, because both Marvel and DC are going to re-opt, and you're not going to let them just go public domain.
Exactly right.
But I do think, that could be something Jeff Johns had in his head, to be like, that's just a fun date to pick.
Sure.
Because that's what would happen. Because again, the dates he put in Doomsday Clock are not like concrete. Like, we're not really going to get Secret Crisis in July 10th of 2030.
Well, that and the fact that not all of the characters would become public domain in 2030.
Correct.
It would only be the ones that were born during that time frame.
For sure.
So, which is like Superman, and just like it very, very few.
It is a fun thing to play with, though, and I think he's very smart in that way. Where I think that would be a nice little like kind of Easter egg of sorts for him to do. So I wouldn't be shocked if that was on purpose.
Maybe so.
But again, I don't think those dates are like specific. I think it's just like, hey, in years to come, this is probably, or may happen. And what's the thing that's crazy with me about this, even the crossover, because again, all the buying out stuff may not happen. That's, extremely unlikely, but I don't think
it's likely. On the lower end of probability.
But the crossover, that's pretty much set in stone. They've teased it in two different, that's from the Doomsday Clock and now Thor issue 2. That's like, okay, this is going to come.
It would be weird if they did that with Doomsday Clock and Thor, if they teased these things at the same time and then did nothing.
For sure.
It would be very weird. Now, having said that, it was ambiguous enough to where if things don't line up or things go awry in the two, creative director sides of the publishers, and to where they just don't do anything. They say, because they haven't announced anything, they haven't talked about it openly. So it's ambiguous enough to where they could just be like, that was just a fun thing that we added, and we were okay with.
I'm very curious though, because the thing where I'm kind of like, I wonder how this worked out, is because Doomsday Clock was delayed like by a year. It was supposed to be a year event, took 2 years to come out. Just the final issue came out in December, right?
Right.
So, and in the final issue is where we get the Secret Crisis mention of, like Superman fighting Thor, Green Behemoth, saving Superman, and is stronger than Doomsday, yada yada. So I'm wondering was that planned from the beginning, or because that's just one little panel thing, one little caption. So that could have been added literally a week before it went a day before it went to print.
Absolutely.
So
kind of like the Flash showing up in the Infinite Crisis.
Right. So I'm wondering, was this planned out? Because as we know, big corporations like this, especially Disney, Warner, could plan this out 2 years in advance. Being like, look, in coming years, we know we're going to work together and we're all going to go down this path to eventually meet. Or did it happen recently and they're like, hey, Johns, we need you to throw this in real quick. So I want to know what the mindset is, because was it planned or was it not? I'm just very curious.
I have to imagine. I cannot see. I said.
Do you think
before,
it was? So you think it was like a year in advance?
I cannot in any way see how that is not a coordinated. If it was just Jeff Johns and it was just Doomsday Clock, then you could definitely speculate. It's just something fun.
Well, no, it had to have been planned. But what I'm saying, do you think it was planned within like the last year, or did they know at the beginning of Doomsday Clock when this ends, we're gonna meet?
I even would go so far as to wonder. I wonder if that's why Doomsday Clock was delayed for so very long, because that was absurdly long.
But yes,
and I wonder if it was John's going and saying, even going to Quesada and saying, hey, look, I've got this idea. And he's like, well, we've already got all this stuff lined up. So we wouldn't even be able to get to that until this point.
Right.
And then Jeff Johns just going, I can stretch it.
I mean, it's something we'll never really know, I guess, because playing devil's advocate here against myself, pretty much, is comic books get delayed all the time.
That's true.
Freaking, we're still waiting for the sequel to All-Star Batman
Right.
with Frank Miller and Jim Lee. That's literally we were supposed to get for years now.
But when you have a series like that, it's not often that you see a series drag out the way that one did. That doesn't happen all the time.
Not all. I mean,
not like that.
Not all.
It happens.
What I will say is, it is not completely uncommon. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Because comics.
Right. There is
There's
precedent for it.
Yeah.
But my thing is that it's just too coincidental that his book dragged out for the exact amount of time for them to finish War of the Realms
And like a month and a half later.
and move into Thor and let Donny Cates finish up his work on the Absolute Carnage and make all of the things, introduce Null and the backstory to Null and all these things that had to fit.
I do agree, but that's why I was playing devil advocate to myself. It's just I'm trying to look at all the angles here, because it's like I feel like I am a detective and I want to look to see how all this is gonna line up.
I'm doing the same thing, and I'm just looking at it as probability. The probability is that this was a coordinated, because again, they came out within a month of each other.
For sure, yes.
And there was a lot of crap that had to happen between point A and point B.
100%.
A lot of books and titles and storylines that had to play out to even get to the point to where Marvel could introduce the Black Winter and the elements and the conditions for them to make that, to imply about the DC or the Justice League and such.
For sure. And the newest piece of news that we didn't get to talk about in the video where we went into depth about this was that co-publisher for DC Comics, Dan Didio, is no longer with DC as of this past Friday. I don't know the exact date, but it was apparently sudden. Like, there was no word. So much so that at the point of recording this podcast, we still do not have an official statement from DC Comics. Now, co-publisher of DC Comics, that's the guy. Like, as far as publishing goes, he is the guy who approves every storyline, every book, every major event, every crossover. Like, he's the dude. He's all the editorial goes to him. And Jim Lee was the other co-publisher, but I feel like that was, I can't say this definitively, but it almost feels like it was kind of honorary, because he's also the chief creative officer,
right?
And Jim Lee's been with the company so long, and he is a massive creative, very smart guy, one of the most beloved artists in the industry. So I was almost like, to keep him happy, they're like, you're chief creative officer and co-publisher.
Dan Didio definitely seemed like he was the biggest voice in the room.
Exactly. It seemed like he was the one really spearheading the co-publishing or the publishing side of it.
Right.
And as we've known, he is, just through actions, it seems like he likes to change and bring he likes to shake things up a lot.
Right.
Jeff Johns, obviously being the chief creative officer for years at DC Comics, you could tell by his writing, he's very legacy driven. He loves the old stuff, Doomsday Clock, we see it. We get Legion of Superheroes back. We get the JSA back. And I love that, because I'm just like that too, which is why Jeff Johns is one of my favorite writers. And Dan Didio is very much, about progressing, moving forward. We got the new 52, lots of changes. He did the 52 series, which we got a comic every week for 52 weeks, 52 books back in the day. So with that said, I'm wondering, pure speculation again, if AT&T was like, hey, no, Dan Didio was kind of butting heads with that, not letting up, being like, yeah, but no, this Generation Zero is where I think it needs to go. And they're like, but we just fixed everything. Or it could be flipped. Maybe he was the one fighting to keep it the same, and AT&T wanted to push it. We won't really know. Either way, point is, they clearly didn't agree. Yeah. Because being that high up in a company like DC Comics, Warner Brothers, you do not just get fired day of without any warning, without any send-off. Like, that's a thing where they kind of prep for the new guy or girl, and then it's this transition, not just, hey, and from what we hear, again, I don't know, but rumor says he left the grounds that day.
Right.
Like, literally got his box, put some of his stuff in there, walked out.
And again, to be fair, we don't know definitively that he was fired.
No, we don't.
He may have quit.
He may have quit. Yeah, exactly. He could have quit, or, they could have let him go. But either way, the point is, whether he quit or whether he got fired, it probably wasn't pretty for it to be that sudden and same day.
Yeah, I can say from experience, typically when you see an abrupt departure of an executive at that level, you said the wrong thing to the wrong person.
He was there for 17 years, I believe.
You got into a passionate, heated conversation, and something got said or things got said that crossed a line one way or another, and that was all she wrote. and it was like, you're done today, or I'm done today. It's one or the other. Either somebody said you're fired, or somebody said I quit. I'm done.
This is crazy because where does that leave Generation Zero? Because I personally don't know. I don't know if that's even no knowledge out there. If he was the one co-publisher, he obviously had his hands deep in this next initiative, but because the fact that he quit or got fired, it's like, did he agree with that or didn't he agree with that? Who was the one pushing it, and where did that? Because now we're in a state of flux where what's going to happen? Are they going to continue on this course? They kind of have to, just because they put so many pieces in motion.
And it's like, what do you do in the interim otherwise?
Exactly. It's like in stories and stuff that's already written, issues that have already been drawn, you kind of have to. So it's what's going to course correct this? Are they just going to, now that they're just stuck either way? Or are we going to see some kind of convergence type event, which happened when the DC offices moved from New York to California, which was this quick little event book that explained everything real quick. It's like, oh, this is for the meantime. This is why this and this is happening. Here you go, which people didn't like because it was literally just happened to explain something real quick because it was like, here's a Band-Aid. So we're going to get something like that?
I don't know. And the biggest thing, and that I think all DC fans, and if just like if you're like me, just a comic fan in general, who's just really super curious about what's happening, I think what everybody should be really wondering, and because of the voices that we've heard and a lot of the things that we've heard, it seems like there's more than one problem at DC. So there's a lot of people, Rob Liefeld went out on social media and was just like, he should have been fired a long time ago. Just, there's kind of voices that have kind of articulated things on both sides about Dan Didio's departure. And, but that wasn't the only issue I think that highlighted a broader problem, because everything that we've heard and what we know so far is that there's a lot of voices that have a lot of different ideas going on at DC as far as what direction DC should go in, including the remnants of what Jeff Johns did, who is no longer a part of DC Publishing. He's moved over to the film side. But he left a huge thumbprint on the way out the door with Doomsday Clock, right? And a lot of other things that he did in regards to Rebirth.
I kind of wonder where Scott Snyder falls into this.
Scott Snyder is one of the people I'm talking about. He carries a ton of weight. His opinion carries a ton of weight, and it's very much you see what he's doing with the Justice League and Batman and the Dark Knight. Now that's coming up, the Metal series,
DC's Death Metal.
Death Metal, and there isn't a whole lot that kind of reminds you or falls in direct correlation with what happened in Doomsday Clock. Some of it maybe, but it seems like it very much feels like people on two different time zones.
For sure. I think, I think it was a weekend or two ago, I spent the weekend catching up on a bunch of titles I was behind, and I came in telling you, I was like, I don't know where all this continuity lies, because I'm a big continuity junkie. I'm the guy, I'm a stickler. I like to be like, okay, so if this is happening in this book, I like it all to line up. Clearly it's comic books, and you just gotta kind of have to let things go because it's fake at the end of the day.
Right.
But for the most part, I like to, I think good storytellers can keep things in line.
Yeah.
Right? So, I'm reading the Hell Arisen series, the Superman Batman book, Flash, Batman, Superman, and several other titles in Doomsday Clock, and I caught up on all these titles over the weekend, a week or so back, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't really make sense to me much, because it's like all this stuff is supposed to be going on around the same time or at the same time, at least several of the books are, and it's like literally Superman couldn't be here because this book says he was there.
Right.
Same thing with Batman and Wonder Woman, and things just aren't lining up. And then at the end of, I believe, Justice League issue 39, Scott Snyder's final issue for the Justice League, we see on a page several panels that reference Leviathan, Doomsday Clock, and I believe another Teen Titans event, and just one panel each. And I'm like, okay, so this is them just kind of acknowledging it, but it almost seemed like an afterthought, just to be like, I realize this is going on, so here. But, Snyder is kind of doing something completely different with his Justice League, with Perpetua and all that stuff going on, and she's messing things up and creating her own, world and universe because she's a god. But then, we know from that issue that the Perpetua stuff takes place after Doomsday Clock because it references Doomsday Clock.
Exactly right.
And Superman, fighting Dr. Manhattan. So I'm like, okay. So literally everything that Jeff Johns just fixed, now you're just changing it again, literally the next month. So that, and just the fact that the characters can't be in all these different places at once, I'm like, what's happening? And you can't have these big events going on at the same time like this, because it's conflicting. Like, you could have big events. You could have a big Flash event and a Batman event going on at the same time.
I mean, you can, but you're going to frustrate the audience.
Yeah, but
which is going to cost you money.
For sure. So, but two of these events that are literally like crossing over on all these different titles, it's like, what's, because the Hell Arisen book, the Justice League book, and I think the Batman book, I may be forgetting one or two, are all kind of in the Snyder perpetual world. And you have Doomsday Clock doing its kind of own thing, but that was supposed to be this big overlapping thing. It's kind of confusing. Even as I say it, it's confusing me, just to kind of tell you guys. And so I just don't know, like, how do you have all these different things going on at the same time? Again, you could have a Batman event and a Superman event going at the same time, as long as they're not crossing over into all the other books. Like, if you're just crossing over in the Batman titles, fine. But if you're crossing over into Green Lantern, Flash, Wonder Woman, then that's a universe wide, and it's like, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I'm kind of confused, and now we got the Flash Forward series, which is also referencing the Doomsday Clock stuff, because Wally West Flash now has Dr. Manhattan's powers. Paradox is a new character who seems like he does get his powers from when the timelines change, and with all the timelines and stuff changing recently, this dude could be super powerful. So, is this another Dr. Manhattan-esque character? I don't know.
It's a lot. And I honestly, like, with Dan Didio's departure, it really does beg, it makes you wonder, or you look at all these other things that are going on, and it really does make you think, AT&T, the brass, might have just gotten fed up with this mess, they're infighting, or all of this back and forth of what the direction should be, and they may have just held him accountable, as the head, and just said, hey, look, man, like, this happened on your watch, and then him not being willing, who knows what the conversations were. It could be so many different things, but I mean, the bottom line is that we do know that there is a lot of different things going on behind the scenes at DC, and again, I don't mean to keep bringing it back to this, but it's one of the two reasons why I'm speculating, could AT&T be looking to just go, we don't want to deal with this, because it's not just the publishing side. If the publishing side is a mess that has to be cleaned up massively or just cut, right, to make it profitable, and then you've got the film side, which is profitable sometimes and profitable not, but they've also got their own mess going on at Warner Brothers, where they don't really have clear course of direction, and it's kind of all over the place, and there's a whole bunch of executives lobbying to put their fingerprints on it. And you have AT&T up here looking at all this going on and going, is this even worth the time, investment, risk, all this kind of stuff? Are we in a position, do we really want to invest when we're trying to do all this? Do we really want to invest a lot of time into, and maybe that looks like, say them coming in and saying, you have this much time to get this cleaned up, and then we are just going to licensing. Well, or it could very much look like, we're going to solicit. We're going to solicit and see if there's anybody that's got an offer that makes us puts a twinkle in our eye.
Well, that's the rumor, right? That if this 5G, so to speak, didn't work out, this is their Hail Mary pass. Right. Like, if this doesn't work, we're either going to licensing or possibly just selling.
Because they're not just looking at the mess. They're also looking at the realities of the shift in demographics, sales, hard print copies versus digital, all these sorts of things. They're losing massively. You're seeing massive demographic and number shifts, especially when it comes to young men buying and reading comics because of the digital age. What we are taking in as entertainment is shifting and changing dramatically. They're facing all this stuff. And these are all things they're weighing into the equation. It's what I mean when I say risk.
If the rumor is true that we've been talking about, in this episode in the past, and few people are talking about now, that this is their Hail Mary pass, and if it doesn't work, AT&T, washes their hands, and they're like, okay, now we're looking into other options at this point. What's that's going to be, we don't know. But if this is their Hail Mary, why would you do it in something that's almost mimicking what Marvel did and failed.
Exactly.
It's like
that is the best question. And several people have asked that same question loudly: is what are they doing?
It's like, wouldn't you at least have a different strategy to be your last ditch effort?
You would think your first instinct would be let's look at our entire catalog and our history, and let's look at what worked the most, what was successful, and let's pattern the next move after that.
And I'm telling you, we know, because we did that the Doomsday Clock finale episode. You know, that episode's got like, I think, over 300,000 views now, thousands of comments, and the majority of them were saying, yes, this is what we want. We're bringing it back. And I think that's where you go. Like, how do you revive something? You bring back the things that everyone loved. Because it feels like it's old, but it feels like new again because you didn't have it for so long. Right. And this is what made these companies icons. You know, these core legacy characters. Same thing with Star Wars.
Sure.
You know, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, like those are, the Darth Vaders and Luke Skywalker of the DC universe. So, and I think Jeff Johns realized that. Not only did he realize that, so much so that he was chief creative officer when New 52 was going on, that he's like, okay, maybe we done messed up. Yeah. And fixed it.
Yep.
But then they're changing. I don't get the mindset.
And there's not everyone feels that way. Not everyone agrees with that. We, even in the comments of our Doomsday Clock episodes, there's a ton of people that disagree, that they don't like they don't even like Superman. They think the idea of this inspirational character is stupid. There is definitely that crowd, and that's fine. That's totally fine. What I'm saying is that as the publisher, because again, you're already in an age where we're dealing with massive disruption because of technology and things are shifting. So if this is like, okay, this is our last ditch effort to be publishing at all, digital or otherwise, then you got to look at what has been the most successful, break that down in terms of recipe. What about this was successful? And then bake that into the next step. Instead, they're going in this direction where it just seems like they're basing everything on the political environment or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's that it was a failure for Marvel, and it's probably, and unless, if they tell good stories, it could work. But we just haven't seen a whole crap ton of that. It's just when companies go this direction.
There's just no breathing room. Again, Doomsday Clock just fixed everything.
And you're upending so much stuff that so many people just said they liked.
That's what I'm saying. And the Rebirth one-shot that Jeff Johns did, which literally was about bringing back, in the comic, he literally says, we lost sight of like love, hope, like the stuff that makes these characters and relationships great. And that was one of the best received comics of that year. Like everyone was talking about that. So, even from what the fans want, I even think the majority of comic book fans, dire comic book fans, do want that stuff.
I would agree with you.
So I don't know. The thing that I'm hung up on, and I just literally said it like 30 seconds ago, and I keep saying it because it really is boggling my mind. How do you spend several years trying to fix everything? Finally fix it in a series that took 2 years to come out, that was only supposed to take a year to come out, only for a few months later, not even a year, a few months later, already shake it up and change characters again. It's
a very bizarre move. It's a very, very bizarre move, and it reeks of desperation. I don't know. Frankly, this is just my opinion, I don't know why there was this much desperation outside of it was generated by AT&T coming in and saying, you're not making us enough money, you need to do something different. And that a pressure being applied that wasn't there previously.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, certainly not creatively. You know what I mean? To just be so completely disruptive back to back like that, with almost no explanation at all.
Yeah.
You just instituted and you just righted all this stuff and you just set something. I mean, if you look at it as a whole, it was almost like we had just gotten to the beginning of the new course.
Correct. That is my point.
We spent the last 2 years, plus correcting the New 52 and changing, and all of it has been storyline, moving things back to this new course, and we're just reaching the beginnings of the new course, and then they just they just bring in the bulldozers.
Really? I mean, I just maybe obviously they're gonna have to try to tie it in. I just wanted some breathing room with this new you fix everything. Now let's just get some new JSA titles and stuff and go, because it's inevitable before they change something again.
Yeah.
He literally says it in the Doomsday Clock finale that things are going to constantly keep being reshaped, but Superman is always going to be the core.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm thinking about that now. I wonder if he maybe even knew towards the end that there was going to be another shakeup, and he said that on purpose. That's it's coming. So
Very possible.
He's prepping. He's like, look, we messed up. We're trying to fix it now, but stuff coming. But just know that this is always going to be the core of DC.
At least he hopes.
At least he hopes, right? He was foreshadowing.
I can't help but feel like this whole thing has, if they really do upend everything that dramatically, with the 5G and all the changes they're talking or hint that have been rumored, I just can't help but feel like it's like building a road, spending years building a road, and before anybody has a chance to drive on it, you just tear it up and you say, no, we're actually gonna turn it into a lake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now watch, being, on the flip side of that, playing devil's advocate yet again, watch this event comes out and it actually, because it could be, we don't know. We have, I'm going off of, in all likelihood, I feel like this is gonna be weird and maybe a mess, but it could surprise us. We don't know. What if it fits in perfectly and we're like, oh, we were worried and concerned for no reason. So
it's definitely possible. I will say this. I think no matter what happens, I think, what we said weeks ago when we were talking about what's going to happen with DC Comics, I think that is still highly likely and is probable, where we are going to see a massive reduction of print copies of DC books, and we are going to see a massive move towards digital.
You mean more so than they've already been doing?
Yeah. No, I think that's going to become an AT&T initiative.
Did you know Marvel currently has around 60 to 80 books, I believe. Last I checked, DC has around between the 30 to 40 range. When for, 52 was 52 for a reason. New 52, there was 52 titles.
Exactly.
So 52 has been because of Dan Didio. I guess he just really liked that number, the 52 universes. So they've really played with that number and always try to keep 52 titles, but they just canceled, and not just, but within the last few months, they canceled 20 books, I want to say. They're around 30 to 40 titles right now. I don't have the exact number, but that's not, considering that your competitor has double that, and you're Batman, you're Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash. That's crazy right there.
And I don't know about you, but I was just saying this to you, yesterday? That I feel like even the way with the books they have, it's like they're just making it confusing. Like what they're doing with The Flash, where they're telling one story over 3 books, and then they're like, no, just kidding, to be continued, but we're going to revamp and take the book series back to this. And they're just changing the sequencing of the number, the issue numbers for no reason.
That one snuck up on me, changing the Flash title numbers yet again.
Yeah, but for no reason.
I think their reasoning, I think, is because we're going into the generation 5 or 5th generation. So they're like, let's go into that again.
Again, my point is that it's just confusing.
It is.
For no reason. And it's, again, it's creative license, do what you want. I just don't, there's just a lot of the changes and the moves they're making. It just, for me, just doesn't make a whole ton of sense.
No, yeah. I mean, we could go on and talk about this forever, but we're going to continue talking about it as more news comes out. Yeah. Especially, I'm very curious to see what DC's official statement is on Dan Didio's departure.
I think we're going to learn a lot over the next couple of months.
For sure. And San Diego Comic-Con is around the corner. And they had a very small booth at San Diego Comic-Con last year. They were not at New York Comic-Con last year at all.
Right.
So this year is going to be very
Which is
telling.
Crazy, by the way, because DC has always had a huge presence at both of those cons.
Yeah, those are the 2 biggest cons in the country.
Yes. And we've been to them many times, and they've always been a huge presence there. And it's just weird.
But we're going to be at San Diego Comic-Con this year. So we weren't able to make it out last year, but we're going to be there this year. So we're going to get to see firsthand what their presence is going to be. Because we always do interviews and stuff with them, with their writers stuff. So I'm very curious to see what they're going to be pushing and stuff like that.
We're going to be watching very closely.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to learn a lot before then, because A lot is going to also, hinge on who they bring in to replace Didio.
That's actually I know people were saying just, because Jim Lee was already co-publisher, so it's like, oh, we'll just put him full-time there. But he's already chief creative officer.
Right.
This guy has overseen basically everything creative for DC Comics in general. So, like,
I'll be very surprised if Lee ends up taking the publishing role.
Right. They're just like, here's another $300,000 a year.
Yeah.
But with that said, let's talk about the Thor comic book.
Which is directly coinciding with what we're talking
because they teased that in Thor issue 2, which kind of sparked all this conversation. But Donny Cates, he's one of my favorite writers out right now. I mean, he's been doing fantastic work with Venom, freaking Carnage, Absolute Carnage, now Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy. He's like doing everything.
Yeah.
He's the guy at Marvel, I feel like, right now.
And I think so far, we're only 3 issues in as of right now, but I think Thor so far, is some of his best work.
His Venom stuff. I need a few more issues.
It just, it feels more mature. It feels like a writer who's hitting his stride.
I think Thor almost kind of lends itself to that, though, too, just because Thor is that, that mythology, that Greek mythology and stuff like that.
And apparently, he at the end of the first issue, I don't know if you read it, where he wrote kind of a letter to the fans.
I didn't read that,
at the end, and he talks about how that Thor is his dream book.
Really?
Yeah, and he's wanted to write a Thor book, and it's this specific aspects, at least, of this specific story. He's been working on and developing for years. And so this is like a dream come true sort of book for him. So, but it very much feels like a writer who is really, found his groove, and he's hitting on all cylinders. The writing is just really sharp, and the storytelling so far is just really, really, really good. You know that for me, it takes a lot to really hook me on a comic,
right?
Like right out of the gate. And I was pretty much locked in on after the first issue. I was like, this is really solid.
I think, even his writing is really solid, but even more so than that, I think where he shines is his ideas. He's basically just a fan who has the keys to the castle and can play with these characters. Because it's like all these ideas are like, yeah, that's like stuff us like fans and nerds like geek about all the time. It's like, could you imagine if Thor became the Galactus? I mean, the Herald of Galactus and stuff like that, or like, the Absolute Carnage. Like, let's bring Cletus Cassidy back. You know what I mean? And have him be this like monster freaking symbiote and link him to Null and all that stuff like that. So his just ideas, I think, are just really, really fun. And his cliffhangers at the end of every issue, it literally gets, the nerd in you like, oh, what are you going to do now? Like, for, there's going to be spoilers for this, obviously, for his Thor run. Thor issue 3, like him fighting Beta Ray Bill. Yeah. Like that, the beat in there I told you that was my favorite beat, is when Beta Ray Bill has Mjolnir and Thor's trying to call it back, and he's like, no, brother, I will not let you do this, go down this path working with Galactus. And he's like, dude, I'm going to rip your arm off by pulling this back. So he's like, no, I'm not going to let go. He's like, fine, then I'll take your other. And by that, he takes Stormbreaker. Not only does he take Stormbreaker, he freaking jumps up in the air, comes down, and Beta Ray Bill is holding Mjolnir and smashes Stormbreaker over Mjolnir into like glass, basically.
He obliterates it.
Just showing, one, how BA is, but two, how much more powerful Mjolnir is than Stormbreaker.
Right.
So I was like, well, that's crazy, which is an argument in itself, because that's been argued a lot. It's like, which one is stronger? But he says it in the comic. He's not only the freaking Allfather now of Asgard, he's imbued with the power cosmic. So this is like super Thor.
Yeah,
like,
he even in talking to Galactus, he's like, listen, brother, you don't know what you just created.
Yeah.
Like, before you gave me anything, you don't even understand the power that I'm already holding. And that was what I really liked about even the fight with Beta Ray Bill, was the setup was this: he doesn't like Galactus, but he has to help Galactus. Galactus thinks he can control Thor, and Thor is like, you cannot control me. I don't serve you. I'm here because I want to be here, because there's a need. And so Beta Ray Bill comes in and is angry at Thor for helping Galactus, but Thor has to stand between Beta Ray Bill and Galactus. And so there's this like, it's like, listen, I don't want to fight you, man, but you don't know what's going on. You don't know the full story. It was just a great
I'm
setup.
trying to save the universe, bro.
Just even the concept, just going back to what you said about his ideas, the whole concept of introducing Null and the backstory of Null, and even the Necrosword, and now using that and pulling that in and creating the story of the Black Winter and that whole concept. Just great concepts that reek of like ancient mythologies and all kinds of different aspects. And the way he's expounding, Jason Aaron did a great job of expounding on Thor's, legacy and mythology. Yep. And now he's taking kind of and piggybacking off of that and really kind of kicking it up a notch. It's just really, really fun.
Yeah, no, to the fact, even with like the Necro sword, like we know Gore, the God Butcher, had it, and now he's playing with it and all this stuff. I just love that's like my favorite stuff in comics, when you take things from other writers or just things that were mentioned years ago and then you make it like new and relevant.
Right.
I think that's so smart. It's kind of like what Scott Snyder did with the Court of Owls and stuff like that. But yeah, I love the fact that Thor is like talking to Galactus, a god.
Right.
He's like, yeah, but I'm like the Allfather now, I'm in charge of Asgard. So because of that, I don't answer to no one, not even you, because I am a god. You're a god, I'm a god.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you want here. And you gave me the power cosmic. So he actually blows off freaking Galactus' like fingers and stuff.
No joke.
Which is like, okay.
Yeah, he makes his point.
Yeah. Really, really cool.
And the face-off, in the first 3 issues, I mean, you get this confrontation. It's not really a confrontation, but you get this brief interaction between Thor and Loki, where he introduces like Thor is growing weary and there's something wrong. He's sensing there's something wrong.
Which they keep referencing even in issue 3.
Yes.
Which is really cool.
And, that initiates there's something deeper going on here. And then there's this conflict that starts with Galactus, and that continues through issue 2, that back and forth. And then you got Beta Ray Bill comes in. And so you've had all these fun conflicts while simultaneously introducing all these new beats and plot points. I love it. I think it's one of the best. It's one of my favorite books to come out in a while so far. Again, we're only 3 issues in, so I don't want to, but it's really, really fun, and I think he's doing such a great job. I'm so curious to see how this plays into not only the Marvel Universe and what effect it has on the Marvel Universe, where they're taking it all, especially when you consider what they're trying to introduce with as far as the Noel character and his backstory and mythology, but also what role this is going to continue to play to lead into this potential seeming crossover between DC and Marvel.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, those first 2 pages, I believe 2 and 3 of issue 2, where he kind of hints to the Justice League and stuff like that. To me, it seems like, so at the end of this run, you're going to need the Justice League to help you fight off the Black Winter. Right. You're going to need Superman and stuff. Because, again, in Doomsday Clock, Superman fights Thor. Maybe they come into conflict, similar to Beta Ray Bill and Thor because of that. But then they unite and obviously defeat the Black Winter. That seems to be the most logical point as of now. Because, as issues keep coming out, and I'm curious to see, because now I'm like, are they going to tease it again? Are they going to, what was the reason of that? Because maybe it was, highly unlikely, but maybe it was just a fun thing he wanted to put in for fun. But I feel like no, because it was too coincidental with Doomsday Clock, as we've been making videos on. But I'm just very curious to see when's our next reference.
Yeah.
Like, when is this crossover announcement gonna even be officially announced? Are they saving it for San Diego Comic-Con? Right. Or are we even like a year out and they're just literally planting seeds? So it's like it's a slow burn, much like Doomsday Clock.
Doomsday Clock, yeah.
And then they're just boom, drop it on us. So I don't know. So now I'm reading Thor because it's a really good title, but also I'm like, I want to know more about this crossover.
And I can't leave out the fact that at some point my boy Bruce Banner the Hulk seems like he's going to come into play, and I have to imagine that might mean that he's going to somehow play a role in this Thor title.
Cosmic Hulk.
Who knows? That really has me wondering, like, where's Hulk going to come in? Because he's got to come in before that, right? You would think.
You would imagine.
He's got to play some kind of role. So I'm really I'm kind of stoked to see where it all goes with this story and how it leads to that potential crossover.
What we're saying is, if you haven't put Donny Cates Thor on your pull list, you need to put it on your pull list.
You absolutely must. Yeah, it's a good one.
And it's actually good now if you're behind to read 3 back to back to back. That's probably the best, so you don't have to have that huge cliffhanger.
Yeah, and this is the time you want to jump on before it gets too deep.
For sure. But moving on, we got some more Star Wars news. Now, you actually read up on this. I don't know much about this.
There's not a ton to know yet.
Well, Charles Soule is doing some books.
Yep. We got our first look at a new Star Wars series, a new Star Wars initiative that's coming out, a series of novels called Star Wars: The High Republic, which is the title and what we were hearing rumors may be the next big Star Wars film trilogy. Not instead of it being the Old Republic, being the High Republic, which is a little bit, it's not as old or dated. So far, I believe there's 5 books, 4 or 5 books. And Charles Soule is writing one of them, and the one he's writing, I believe, is called The Light of the Jedi.
That guy's just been doing, because he's doing several of the Marvel Star Wars comic books, and he's just kind of, and as we know, all that stuff is in continuity, is in canon with Star Wars lore. So now he's doing like actual like books, you know what I mean? As far as not to say comic books aren't books, but you know what I mean. He's doing like actual novels. So that's kind of crazy, like how much lore he's adding to like the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, and he seems to love it. I mean, he's clearly a huge Star Wars fan, and he's a great writer, so I'm happy he's there. You know, Greg Pak is doing a lot of work.
Our boy Pak, yeah. We got to get him on the show.
I know,
again.
we got to have him on. But he's doing a lot of work at Star Wars, and, you know, they're doing a lot of fun stuff. You know, some of it has gotten overshadowed by a lot of the stuff, you know, the craziness swirling around Star Wars. But they've done some really fun stuff in the comics and in expanding, you know, the canon. With Star Wars. So I'm really curious to see what they do with the High Republic. I'm ultra interested because of what's happening on the film side.
For sure.
Because it definitely, for them to introduce that now, very much feels like that is somehow they're trying to specifically, especially after we found out that they introduced Revan as official canon into, along with some other Sith legend characters.
Revan's been coming out a lot just in like in general. Like now they're releasing his lightsaber, his proper his Force Effects lightsaber.
We already had some collectible figures.
Yeah, GameStop is doing an exclusive for his Jedi look.
Yeah.
So he's getting some merchandise, you know, flowing. So I'm wondering if this is to prep the market and everything to be like, yeah, he's coming live action near you.
I feel like it's 2 birds, 1 stone. They know it's a popular character and they can make money right now, but also they're reintroducing him as like, hey,
I want that lightsaber. Apparently the lightsaber too, it's taking a note out of Savi's where it can turn multiple colors.
Nice.
So you could go purple or red. Just with the ones on the
those are his 2 sabers.
Yeah, the Jedi and Sith. Yeah, so I'm like, yeah,
that's awesome. Well, I would love to. I would rather them go Old Republic because
so would I. Yes.
That's the time frame in which Revan and a lot of these other
Malgus
really
and all
cool,
that stuff.
Sith lords, were staged.
I want to see the creation of the Rule of 2 with Bane, Darth Bane.
Yes.
Oh, that would be
That would be
because that's literally setting up.
Well,
like, all the stuff we
I
already
kind
have.
of would love to see them go all the way back and then do things chronologically and get us.
So you just want all of it.
Yeah, I would love to see them show us on film, you know, in a big budget, you know, live action film, show the birth of the Sith, the birth of the Jedi.
Oh yeah,
and then have like a series that maybe lasts, you know, another 7, 8, 9 movies that shows us chronologically from the birth of the Sith and the Jedi all the way to, you know, the beginnings of the fall.
Yeah.
You know, the New Republic and all that kind of thing. I would love to see that play out almost like a Harry Potter series.
Ooh, like over like in real time?
Yeah, where they just kind of take us through these and they introduce us to these characters and it takes us down this path. That would just be so fun, and you would get to you could do so many things in such a short window, you know, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
You know, where it would just be nonstop, you know, oh my God, what's going to happen next?
Revan is like one of my favorite. He's a fan favorite for a reason. He's just really cool. I mean, he's both. He's bounced back and forth from Sith to Jedi more times than I can count. Right? So it's like I want to see that. And I know everyone's like, Keanu Reeves should play him, which that could be pretty dope.
It could. The thing I tell you all the time, I can't get past is his voice.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, I just have a hard time imagining Darth Revan being like,
They'll pull a Darth Maul where you have like someone play him with someone else voice him.
May the Force be with you.
Oh, God. On that note,
I mean, you know, he's John Wick, so you can't really say much. He can kill you.
No.
Speaking of killing you, you've been watching The Outsiders.
Oh, you did want? Yes, you've been wanting. To
I wanted to bring this up
before
we wrap things up because we do have to wrap up.
I'm 1 episode behind though.
You're 1 episode behind me, But for those of you who have not seen The Outsiders, if you're a Stephen King fan,
It's The Outsider.
I'm sorry, The Outsider. Correct.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not Outsiders. That's a different thing. If you're a Stephen King fan or just a fan of like the creepy horror, whatever thrillers, The Outsider on HBO, which is a Stephen King story, is awesome. It is so good. I've said many times on the show, I'm not a huge horror fan, but this series, I'm talking about, locked me in episode 1. And it goes from this murder mystery, and I won't say anything that's spoiler, but it goes from this murder mystery to something much deeper and much more broad. It gets into supernatural elements, and it
very cool.
Really interesting and really fun.
That first episode, because you told me to watch it. You were like,
I was
4 episodes
preaching it in the whole
time.
office, like, are you watching this?
Yeah. So I literally went home that night and watched the pilot, and good Lord, it's one of the best pilots I remember watching in recent history.
In a while.
Because it got me hooked like that. And Jason Bateman starred in it and directed the first 2 episodes, I believe. He has a monologue in the second episode where I was like, good, that is freaking
Fantastic.
awesome. And then, no spoilers, but then we get the twist around episode 4 and they kind of unveil what's going on. And I was just like, no.
Yeah,
That's such a
so
cool.
good.
That's such a cool concept.
It's so good. And it really did also, especially the first couple episodes, it really highlighted how underappreciated Jason Bateman is as a talent.
For real, right?
As a writer, as an actor, as a director. He's just a multi-threat talent. The guy is just so good. And again, we won't spoil or say anything about it, but if you're not watching The Outsider on HBO, if you have at HBO, definitely recommend that show.
For sure.
It is so fun. We're 8 episodes in now.
8 episodes in, yep.
I'm up to date. Arris is still an episode behind. But I cannot wait to see how. There's 2 episodes left, and I can't wait to see how it wraps up.
I'm very, very curious. And Ben Middleton. Ben.
I love some Ben Mendelsohn.
I said his name wrong. Okay, Ben Mendelsohn?
Ben Mendelsohn.
There you go. That guy. Awesome.
He's good in everything. You remember that show on Netflix, Bloodline?
Amazing.
Incredible. And he was the younger brother who was in trouble. He was kind of like the, I guess, antagonist, but not.
He was one of the villains in Rogue One.
Yeah. But he is so good in everything he's in, and he's fantastic in this series.
Yeah. So if you're not watching it and you have access to HBO, you need to binge this, because I was able to binge it because by the time you told me about it, there was like 5 episodes up.
Right.
And it's one of those shows where there's cliffhangers so binging it is perfect. So you don't have to wait an entire week, because they release it every Sunday, I believe.
I've been watching it week to week, and every week I'm just like, come on. It's so good.
So if you're looking for a good show and you like horror or suspense, definitely check out The Outsider on HBO.
Do it.
Stephen King goodness. But with that said, guys, that's going to bring today's podcast to an end, and we'll see you guys next time when we talk about all things comics.